La parole est à présent donnée à notre keynote speaker, Rosanna. Cette présentation se déroulera en anglais et pour les personnes qui participent à celle-ci en présentiel, je leur demanderai de poser les questions à la fin pour ne pas interrompre la présentation de Rosanna. Je vais faire circuler un micro auprès de vous à la fin de la présentation. À tout de suite.
Can I do a sound check? It's okay? Okay. So I'd like to start my talk by going back in time and trying to understand the context of our digital world where we are right now. So you see here the rings of time, and you'll see it in this image. I'm sure we have a very diverse group in this room, and we're all from multiple generations. I'm sure some of you will remember the 1960s, the 1970s, where we had the first TCP/IP messaging, and where we had the first optical fiber. Maybe you remember your Commodore 64. There people in the room who might still remember the Commodore 64, or the first time Windows came out, yeah, when Microsoft came out, and MS-DOS. This was words that come from, from 30, 40 years ago. And if you look down at all the rings of time, like the World Wide Web was already there before the 1990s, if you can see. So the world web browser was being developed in the 90s. Very exciting time. I'm not going to say what I was doing, but I already was an observer. I was born already. So Linux came out also in the 90s, and Yahoo, the first web browsers and search engines were coming out, and people were saying, you could search the name of your favorite actor and you'll find information. So I still remember these times. And Wikipedia in the turn of 2000, remember when Wikipedia came out and people were saying that this has no future, we don't know where, the Encyclopedia Britannica is much better source. And where are we now, where everybody is actually using Wikipedia? So, and if you look down here, 2010, Snapchat, of course, all the social media, Instagram, and 2017, it goes so far. 47% of global population have the internet in 2017. Here you see, where was it? 16% in 2005. And right now we have 64.6% of global population on the internet. So just think of this growth. The number of internet users worldwide, how many? I mean, this is like billions of people using the digital platforms that we're building. Most of the internet users are in China, yeah. However, the region with the highest internet penetration rate is Northern Europe, and second to that is Western Europe. It's at 93%, so it's relatively high. So this is where everything happens in the digital world. This is the history, very short history. Now, another visualization of the internet. This was a project of somebody who was he was a penetration tester, and he thought, if I can actually visualize the network of my clients, I could try to visualize the whole internet. And in 2003, he did that. This was the visualization of the internet as it was at the turn of the century. And this is what it is right now. 2021, it's growing exponentially. You see, it's very central. It's not a decentralized system or network. It's very centralized. The closer to the center, the more connected you are. This part is more or less China. This represents China. And you can see actually that there are only 2 portals to the internet in China. You could see a lot of things. If you have time, I suggest you go and just put on Google visualization of the internet. In 2003, he created a still image, and now, and since 2021, it's a video that shows, you can see it growing. You can see the political activities when Iran shut down their internet. You could see it there. So it's very visual, and it's really interesting. And you think, this is our playground. This is where all our entrepreneurs are, students are. This is where all the cyber attacks are happening. This is where our landscape. Yeah? So imagine the growth. Now, if you talk to the senior information security professionals, if you're working with them, a lot of them started the career at the turn of the century. You know, those people who are now senior consultants or are heading like their consultancies. Most of them started with a Y2K bug, and I'm sure you know what the Y2K bug is, yeah, the millennial bug. When at that time, in most programs had only 2 digits for a year to represent a year instead of the 4 digits. So when 00 came around, it became like 1900. And that was the big scare when I was going through my youth. People were afraid of this turn of the calendar and what would be the impact on our, at that time, growing digital economy. But not just the economy, but also the critical infrastructure that will run on these digital systems. So the then US President Bill Clinton said, this is the first challenge of the 21st century, which we successfully met. So already in the 1980s, those companies that were using digital systems like the New York Stock Exchange, they spent $20 million just to remediate this bug. You think of all the bugs that we're remediating nowadays. At that point, they were really scared, and they spent $20 million just to remediate this bug, and nothing really happened. A lot of effort went into this, though, and I think this is the first, let's say, information security challenge that we had. Information security or cybersecurity is a very young field, actually, if we think about it. Now, the horror stories, which is probably something we always hear when we talk about cybersecurity. From 2000 to 2013, well, the biggest so far data breach is still Yahoo. Yahoo in 2013, 2014, they had a data breach, but they did not disclose this until 2016. And 3 billion users were impacted. Email addresses, passwords, security questions, all of that. And also, the NSA itself was a victim of a hack, yeah, and it was the shadow brokers. They broke into the NSA. They exfiltrated a lot of information, especially zero-day exploits. And these exploits came to be WannaCry and NotPetya. I think by now people know WannaCry, NotPetya. This was the birth of the ransomware attacks that we've been seeing ever since they had extracted these exploits from the NSA. So you can see the NSA was developing, not developing, but they were keeping these, and hackers were able to, but they were not protecting it enough from the hackers. Hackers got it, shared it with the rest of the world. Within a few days, there were already exploits. So, you know, since 2017, we have ransomware attacks all over the world across all sectors. Even in Belgium, the attack on the city of Antwerp. We have hospitals during COVID, a lot of healthcare facilities. Every now and then, there's from the CCB, you have news saying there is a new ransomware going around. The Defense Ministry was also breached, the Log4j exploit, where open source libraries that are used in all of our software really was, suddenly there was a vulnerability discovered, and within a few hours, it was already being exploited. I think this was at the last year, just before Christmas, right? And it says here, Belgian companies suffer more ransomware attacks. We don't know the real number, but we spend the least on security. So this is what I'm trying to bring awareness on, that cybersecurity is not just a cost, right? Now, what happens if you don't invest? Now, this is really the tip of my horror story, and then after this, I'm going to do a feel-good story, so I don't want everybody to feel bad. But cybercrime is going to cost $10.5 trillion annually by 2025. So that's the 12 zeros. So 3, 3, 3, and 3, 12, and then 12 zeros. So this is, it actually represents the third largest economy after US and China. So it's that big. I think right now, so that's their forecast for 2025. I think 2023, their forecast is around 8 trillion. So if you can see, this was done in 2021. Every second, $190,000 is the cost of cyber attacks. Every hour, it's 684.9 million an hour. So you think, and every day, it's 16.4 billion. So you can really see that our nation-state attackers whose main motivation is financial gain, you know, especially those countries where we're not allowed to trade with, well, this is where they get the money to survive. Okay, I'm not mentioning any countries, but you know those countries. But there's a good story here. So I don't know if you remember Norsk Hydro. It was an aluminum manufacturer in Norway. And there was one ransomware attack after another, and this hit them, and it hit the rest of the industrial sector. But the difference is that they reacted in a very counterintuitive way, meaning the first time you hear of an attack, my company's an attack, my bank, my organization is under attack. What do? We keep silent about it and we work internally, right? We try to say, okay, we don't want our clients to get upset, we don't want the shareholders to get upset. They had a different approach because already they had a culture of transparency. So they said, okay, their company was hit, their aluminum manufacturer. What they did was they started to get old employees who knew how to do it manually. They started to switch to manual production. But then they also decided 3 things. They would pay no ransom. Because we also know, even if you pay ransom and you do get the decryptor, sometimes it doesn't work. It's not an assurance. Plus, if they know that you're going to pay, they're going to attack you in the future as well. So they said, we are not paying ransom. We will ask Microsoft to help us restore our operations, and we will be fully open about the breach. Here in green highlighted, very, very counterintuitive. Nobody was doing this in 2019. And what happened? They had daily webcasts. They had daily press conference in their headquarters. They posted updates on Facebook. They welcomed journalists into their operational centers and control rooms. This is highly unusual. But the result was they got really good praise. They were able to protect their stock price from shock. There was no negative impact on their stock price because it was completely transparent. And one of the SVP said, on that day, our share price overperformed. So on the day that they announced the hack, and they were continuously communicating about it, they did really well in the market. The share price was really doing good, which in theory is hard to imagine when you say that you have been a victim of Norway's largest cyber attack. So this is really like, for me, something like a gold standard in crisis communication. Their PR team worked well with the communication team, with their IT team, and with their cybersecurity team. So this is like really radical collaboration and just, I would say, radical transparency as well. So in Belgium, we have that possibility. We have the Belgian Cybersecurity Coalition, which tries to nurture these communications among organizations. Not only did they overperform, but because they were open and they were communicating, it prevented other companies from making the same mistake they did thereby preventing the attack from spreading. So it really was a really good thing what they did, and it's been praised a lot in the security circles. Okay, now that was the story of cyber attacks. Now I'm going to think and evaluate, well, why is it the question, are the attacks going to increase or decrease? And the answer is, there is only one way, and the one way is up. It's going to increase. And why? Because our global attack surface is increasing. And as long as the global attack surface increases, the breaches will increase as well. There's no way. Why? There's more people on the internet. More people are using it. There are diverse uses for this now. Like, it's not just for browsing the internet. It's not just for paying. It's also where I do my banking. My kids are there. My kids have teams. They're on social media. I get a ride. I use an app. I want to book a train. I use my app. I book a hotel. Everything I do, I need my phone. So you have diverse uses and a lot of platforms, plus a lot of new technologies coming out. IoT, that means my global attack surface has now extended to my home, my television, my whatever appliance. So your global attack surface for each person is increasing. So why should it not increase? There's opportunity for the hackers, yeah? And then, of course, we're becoming more and more aware of all the vulnerabilities in our system. Okay, I didn't want this to be a horror story, but it's true. The more vulnerabilities are being discovered, and the more they're being exploited. And this is not just in our software and not just in our hardware, it's also in our people. And it's in our processes. Like you were mentioning, people, process, and technology, you have vulnerabilities in all these. So, yeah, and then, of course, increasingly networked organizations. I mean, now we can pay our bills, all organization is digital, and all digital organizations have a supply chain network, and they're digital too. Now we have increasingly networked organizations, so you have a cascade failure risk. Even if you do your security well, how do you know that your suppliers and or even your clients or your customers are not protecting their own networks? So this is really the problem. So in other words, complexity of the problem has increased threefold, fourfold. So what are the concerns of the security teams? There's a lot. The landscape is changing. There's new technology. There's AI, IoT, the changing regulations. There are now more and more regulations coming out, which is good because they say regulations and legislation are always behind technology. But I think that the EU is spearheading regulation in this environment. The only thing is, when we have more regulation, that means companies will have to comply with more stuff. You need skilled people to make sure that when I go to business, I have to be compliant in several contexts, right? And so you have to be compliant, and somebody has to audit to make sure that you're compliant. We need people who know how to do these things. So there's also the skills gap. Yeah, there are people, who we need people, and we don't find the skills. And right now, I bet you there's no organization that's not fighting over the very, very limited talent pool or resources that we have. Okay, I'm going to end now and I'm going to just say, I didn't introduce myself, but I'm Rosanna Kurrer, and what we did in 2017 was we wanted to get more diversity into security, and not just because it's a good thing to do, but because it's the necessary thing to do. We need people with diverse skill sets, people who understand the law, people who understand regulations, people who know how to communicate with soft skills, people who know how to work with IT people and business people, PR people, people who understand human psychology and human behavior. And we need this toolbox in our teams, in our security teams. We cannot just focus on the technology. At the moment, security is very tool-based. Yeah? The approach to security is very tool-based. I'm going to buy a tool, I'll be safe. But it's more than that. And so this is my call to action. If you know people who are motivated to join the cybersecurity workforce, who have a love of technology, and who are ready to put in the work to upskill themselves, it doesn't take long. And the payback for the person who does it, whether female or male, in our case, since from 2017 to 2020, we were all female. Since COVID, we're now more diverse. So we have men as well, but there's different kinds of diversity. Yeah? There's cognitive diversity, there's age diversity. If you are in your 50s and you want to do a career shift, you're looking for meaning. There's nothing more meaningful than the work of cybersecurity experts, protecting our organizations and protecting our critical infrastructure and protecting society in terms of elections. There are going to be elections next year. We have to protect ourselves against that and make sure we're ready. So my call to action is, if you know someone and all they're saying is, I don't have an IT background, I don't have an engineering background, I'm not into IT, but I love technology, I love using technology, I love the platforms, I love this, they're a good candidate, right? So this is my call to action. If you have a friend, a husband, a wife, a daughter, or a son who's interested in, please push them to consider a career in cybersecurity. And so, thank you. That's what I'm talking about now. And thank you for your patience.
Thank you so much, Rosanna, for your keynote presentation. Si le public souhaite poser des questions, je vais vous donner le micro ici.
Thank you for the presentation. I've got a question. You mentioned the skills. And I agree with you, we need skills, but I also feel, and I want your opinion, that it's a never-ending run. We have innovation cycles with new technologies, and I feel like each time the new technology will be less secured, because not really known by the users or the developers, whatever. And so at one point, isn't a low-tech technology or an old technology more stable and more secured?
It depends on what you're doing. I mean, if you're a spy, then you should have one of those Nokia phones and a burner phone. But, I love technology. And the reason why we can't innovate is because the products that we're creating are not secure. We can't secure them. They're not safe. Maybe there's an added value, but we can't secure them. So there's no way we can let them out. So I really, really think that the way is not to go backward, because I'm a fan of digital. The reason I'm here is because I love digital. I would really love us to innovate, but we also have to learn how to secure it. And because our resources are very limited, then we really, really have to understand how to use risk assessment, to assess our risk, but also to balance it with opportunity. Yeah, it's a yin and a yang. Risks, you'd go and say, okay, I will mitigate these risks. Why? Because the opportunity is worth it. And so I think always we should think security is actually an opportunity enabler. So this is how we should think. It should really be the business that pushes for security, because security is what will make us, will enable us to innovate. So that's that. So I would say I wouldn't go back. I'd really rather go forward.
It's not really what I mean. I don't ask
right.
to go.
Okay. Sorry, I misunderstood.
I don't ask to go back. I'm just asking if we need to go slower to be able to cope with the innovations that we can't really handle.
Yeah,
which
so I know
risk.
this is the AI discussion right now that we have to stop so that the regulation can catch up. honestly, I don't know how you can ask people to stop. If it's possible, I would say yes. But if you say yes, let's stop, do you really think people will stop? So that is the problem. It's almost too late. I'm not sure. I'm not an AI expert. But slowing down is a good idea, I think. And I think we have to, create this awareness in our legislators. So the people creating our laws have to understand it. So I think while they're discussing, should we stop, should we not stop, somebody should already be thinking, okay, we get all our members of parliament and they all have to go through a certain kind of training already now, while they're still discussing, should we stop or should we not? Because I think it's just a matter of awareness. People don't know, and people are scared. When people say, I want to talk about digital, the first thing they say is, oh, I'm afraid of the terminology, the jargon, the digital terms that I don't understand, and then it's one and it's the other, and here comes another term. So I really, really think we should make sure that the people who need to know and understand digital, that we should push to make sure that right now they know it, that we cure them of the fear of technology. Right now it's like a black box for most people. But when you take out the black box, actually, it's not rocket science. Really, it's not. It's just a matter of getting somebody who could explain it to you, who's patient enough to ask questions and to guide you and to help you overcome that fear. So I know a lot of people have this fear because that's what we were doing. And people were in our classroom and they were afraid. They were saying, is this really possible? I'm not an IT person. I don't have a STEM degree. I'm not science. Math was always my worst subject in school. It's okay, you don't have to do math. There is no math involved, but you have to be analytical in your thinking, which actually you are. I mean, I think most of us living in the 21st century have to be analytical. If you have a phone and you're working the 21st century lifestyle, your children, you're balancing your children and work and everything, then you have certain skills, because it's not easy living in the 21st century. So, sorry, I mean, I'm really passionate about this, but we really have to get people to understand the digital, really take out that black box and say, this digital affects my life. I use it every day. It wakes me up in the morning. It helps me do my yoga. It helps me. I use an app for this, an app for that, an app for this. I have a right to know what's happening in the background, and I have a right to know what they're doing with my data. So this is what we have to get, that everyone, especially people in government and in public sector offices, where they're making policy for us, they should know this. So I think really education is necessary for us to go forward and innovate.
Thank you.
Sorry, too long answer for a short question. Actually, I didn't check the time, so I'm not sure where we are in time, if we're...
Il n'y a pas d'autres questions. Alors, soit le public craint de la poser en anglais, soit...
Oh, you can ask your question in French.
Voilà, c'est ce que j'allais dire. Vous pouvez poser la question en français et Rosanna répondra en anglais.
I will try in English. How do you see the evolution of the awareness at the top executive people? Because we mentioned cybersecurity has to be linked with risk management.
Yeah.
Risk management has to be addressed first at top level.
Exactly. For me, really, cybersecurity is first and foremost a business challenge, and IT enables the business. So definitely, this is the message that we should tell anybody sitting in the board of any organization. Yeah? They should know. We should have cybersecurity education for people who want to be part of the board, part of an executive team. They should have the basic understanding and the basic terminology so that they understand what it is. Because this is, again, the understanding, the fear of not understanding, and it's very complex. So actually tackling cybersecurity challenge is multi-stakeholder. You can't do it on your own. That's why you need people who understand the law, people who understand human behavior and the business, because the business will be driving it. So the best people actually to train in your cybersecurity organization are people working in the business units. They understand your business processes. They understand who your clients are. They understand what the behavior of your clients. They understand your suppliers, and you put them, give them that knowledge of cybersecurity. That's what we need. And they don't even need to join the security team. They can just be something like the main stakeholder for cybersecurity in their business unit. We really have to make sure that our organizations understand this in all levels, yeah? Not just the IT team and not just the security team. The security team is just there to make sure that, deliverables are being met, that we create a strategy. But when it comes to implementing cybersecurity, it's everyone that has to be on board. And so I think for the people who work in cybersecurity, you agree, right? This is exactly, because the problem with cybersecurity, if the CISO or the team is doing a good job, nothing is happening, right? And then when something happens, then it will depend, okay, do we have an incident response playbook? Are we ready for this crisis? Does our PR and communication team, do they know what to do? Does our CEO know what to do? Maybe the worst person to go to the crisis the crisis center, operation center, is the CEO, because if the CEO enters it, then suddenly everybody can move. So we all have to have a playbook, and it really is beyond IT. It used to be 10, 15 years ago, most cybersecurity professionals came from the IT team, and now we can't afford this kind of career path anymore, and including the board, the management team, they all have to know this. Why? Because they're the one who will allocate the budget for security. And they have to understand what are the justifications for mitigating all these risks, right? And then if you understand your clients, you understand the processes, you understand where you're selling what, then you will know which of my risks, which of my vulnerabilities are critical. And then you can prioritize. If you don't have the understanding, then you can't prioritize, right? So this is why the business people have to be there.
Maybe one last question.
Hi. So can you describe us your typical student?
That's a good question. Typical student, we have a diverse classroom, yeah? And age-wise, they start at mid-20 or to late 20, and they go all the way to mid-50s. And I kid you not, we had somebody, she was a lady from South Africa, who said she worked 15 years ago as an IT project manager, and now, 15 years, she was just working as either a housewife, taking care of the children, or teaching English. And we said, this is going to be hard. Could we get her back into the workforce at 55? But, she did it. So we did training. She passed all her certifications. She worked hard. She got rejected several times, but then she said, I'll do it. And you know what? The market is hungry. They just need somebody to do the audit. They just need somebody to do the project management, right? And then they stop looking at your age. Okay, it also helped that she was in Luxembourg, and in Luxembourg, they had a subsidy to help 50 and above people get back into the workforce, and would subsidize part of her salary for the first 6 months. So for the employer, it was really, really also good. But then I have another person, she was working part-time. And again, I'm telling you, Jeremy, the hard ones, the hard profiles.
Yeah,
she was in her 50s, again, woman in her 50s. she was Flemish, and she wanted to take care of her kids, so she didn't want to work full-time. She worked part-time, and with that, her career for the last 25 years, she was just sidelined, and she was doing the same thing for 20 years. Imagine her persistence that she stayed in the same job for 20 years, and at some point she said, I'm not getting younger, and I'm losing my, I need to learn something, and I have to move. And she did our program, and after that, she discovered her love for mathematics. Can you imagine? And then she said, what is this crypto thing? I want to learn more about public key infrastructures. And she said, now she's the key, the key manager for a major bank. Yeah? That means she manages the keys, the crypto keys for this bank. So you imagine she went from 20 years doing the same thing until suddenly now she has 3 cybersecurity certifications, the CISP, she has CCSP, cloud security. She has 3 certifications. I know that because she keeps on running after me about how she can get her CPE points. If I attend your event, can I get CPE points? Because I'm maintaining 3 certifications now. So that is and then, of course, we also have a lot of immigrants, like myself, who are having a hard time getting into the workforce. But again, all they have to do is work hard, study, make sure that they can take rejection for a long period of time. And I say, it's a marathon for some people. If you have more barriers in front of you, then it's a marathon. If, however, you're young and you have all the languages and you have really good career in law, or you had a good career in finance and you got a certification, that's a sprint. They just need 5 months of studying, pass the certification, then they're in, because they're young. Sorry, but ageism is real. But anywhere in the world, I mean, it's not just here, but it's a human thing. But that's why I'm telling you, we especially really like our success stories for older people. Why? Because we have an aging population. We might as well get these people working jobs that they find meaningful. And they're really happy because they feel like we're protecting our organization. I'm not, when you get older, you start to feel invisible. Okay, it's just me. But because the young people are pushing forward, and our young people should push forward. But we have a whole generation with so much experience who want to get into a digital career. We should enable these people. So that's why I think male and female. So yeah, we have like, they speak 10 to 12 languages in the classroom. It's like we have immigrants, we have Belgian people, we call refugees, especially in 2019. After Brexit, there was an influx of British people as well. We called refugees. So we did have those too. And I mean, we were very successful with them. But of course, they had to put in the work. And whenever they got rejected, I have to say, it's a marathon. Remember, it's a marathon. Go to the next interview, send your CV. We help them with their, how they answer, how do you get a job in a field where you have 0 experience, but you have transferable skills from somewhere else, You're a good communicator, it always helps. Lawyers, if you have lawyers who are bored with what they're doing, tell them to go into cybersecurity. They're really good, I've seen a lot of success stories, people coming from law into, especially women, because I think smart women in school are told to study law, Latin, and the boys are going to engineering. Well, actually, who would have known that among these lawyers are what we call closet engineers? They're actually engineers, they didn't know it. They went into law, and then they pivot into cybersecurity, and wow, they have really nice career paths after that. So yeah, if you have in your direct environment, family or friends, tell them to to go. I mean, we have the universities already pushing for it. So please, we need students in those classrooms. Yeah, I mean, Axel, I think, will also. I mean, we have all these cybersecurity programs, but sometimes the problem is we don't have the students, right? We don't know because they don't know what cybersecurity is. That's sometimes the problem.
Okay, thank you again, Rosanna, for sharing with us tonight your all this information, vision and passion.
Yeah.
Il y a encore énormément de questions qui pourraient être posées, mais malheureusement, we are running out of time, so thank you again.
Thank you so much.
On se retrouve dans quelques instants après une brève vidéo de présentation de KPMG. À tout de suite.